Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Edu360 webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us this Saturday morning. We appreciate you for being here. My name is Tami Olajide, and I'm the head of strategic communications for Union Bank. And it's my pleasure to be moderating this session today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about Edu360 before we get into the program for the day. Edu360 was established in 2018 to enable success for the education sector. That is our mission with Edu360, and we're proud of the impact that we've had over the 2 years since Edu360 has been in existence. You can see some of the statistics projecting now. We've had over 9,000, almost 10,000 attendees at our various programs. We've trained in more than 1,000 teachers and still counting. We've had numerous workshops and we continue to have those kinds of engagements with the education sector. But, you know, we entered 2020 like everybody else, thinking we had big plans for Edu360 this year and how the different ways in which we were going to continue to support the education space. And then, as you all know, the pandemic happened. And when in May, I think the impact of the pandemic became really clear, and it was reverberating across the world. It was apparent to everyone that the education sector would be one of the worst hit. So given our mission with Edu360, we immediately knew that we had to respond quickly. And we decided that it was important, more important than ever before, to sustain engagement with the key stakeholders. So we also pivoted rapidly to moving our programming entirely online. And since May, we've had a series, what we call now the Edu360 webinar series, to provide much needed information, resources, and support to help parents, educators, and students themselves as all of us try to figure out these extraordinary times that we're living in. So like I said, we've had a series of these webinars that are all designed to address various issues or questions that people have had in the education sector, specifically around how we respond to the crisis, the ongoing crisis. But now here we are, it's September, 6 months in, and schools are beginning to reopen. And that has led to another or opened another kind of worms in terms of anxiety and uncertainty. So we thought that it would be essential to have a conversation like this to help parents and to help educators navigate the reentry, to maybe try and bring together thought leaders who can answer some of the questions that we all have. So this particular session, like I said, has been designed to help parents, educators, and caregivers navigate the back to school season. I'll be introducing our speaker. We have a keynote speaker for today. And then after she speaks, she's done with her talk, we're going to have panelists. So we're going to have a panel discussion as well. But before we do that, I will be introducing now Rosemary David Etim, who is a divisional executive for commercial banking at Union Bank. Rosemary is here to speak to us briefly on what Union Bank has put in place to support parents specifically through this time. Before I hand over formally to Rosemary, let me just remind all participants, everyone in the audience, if you've got questions, please put your questions in the Q&A box. You can see it at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take your questions after the panel discussion. So Rosemary, over to you. Please Rosemary, please unmute your mic.
Good morning, everybody, and we are truly happy to have you and welcome. It is indeed a good thing that you're doing, and I think it's about timely to have this, as school will be resuming anytime soon. So once again, welcome, and we are very happy to have you on this session. Like our moderator, Kemi, has alluded to, the coronavirus pandemic brought several economies to a standstill. And it was one of the things that I'm sure that no living being has seen in a long, long time. Most economies across the world were at a standstill. The educational system indeed took a real good beating during this period. The UNICEF report today indicates that over a third of children across the world had absolutely no access to either remote or online learning during this period. So what does this mean? It means that for as much as 6 months, we had children who are either on learning or had absolutely no access to interacting or going back to school in the format in which school has now been structured. And as we know, that educational system remains exceedingly important, and it remains pivotal to the development of any nation. Whether there's a pandemic, no matter what happens in the world, if the world continues to exist, the educational system will continue to play a very vital role as we see it. So the impact has been indicated that it's not just been on parents, not been on the education system alone, but it's been across the entire economic system, whether in Nigeria and across the world per se. These issues has been totally multifaceted. It's been impacted on parents, on teachers, on school owners, and indeed across the entire school system. We have job losses across the entire system. We have reduction of incomes. The inflation today at double digits. Disposable incomes have been truly impacted. So the question to ask will be, how does school go back? How do school teachers go back to school building better? How do they structure today to make sure that they continue to provide that rounded, standardized, world standard education that Nigerian is actually known for in the climate, despite what has happened? So what I would say is to say that the pandemic in itself had impacted on teachers and almost everybody. And it's not just multifaceted, it's also multi-layered. In realizing the impact and the importance of education system in Nigeria and our future, Union Bank has taken a very important role to say, you know what, we're going to play and we're going to partner with every stakeholder in this sector, be it the parents, be it the school, the teachers, and everybody included in this structure. And in doing this, we have actually built around structures, we've built around products to provide relief and to also provide everybody in this sector opportunity to grow, regroup, and to come out better and stronger as we go into the next phase. So what do we have for parents and for teachers? So we have different types of loans. So we have payday loans, and these loans are in different packages. They're available for parents, and they're also available for teachers. For parents to be able to pay fees when they're due, and for teachers today to be able to upscale and go and acquire those needed infrastructure to be able to engage with our online today, to be able to also acquire the required learning apps in their tablet or in their computers to be able to reach children today that probably will not be able to come back to school immediately, given several reasons, be it underlying sickness, whatever it is. But being sure that we are back to school, we are engaging our students as we go forward. Again, the other loans, there's also a back to school loan, and this is up to 15 million. Again, it's also available to parents. And we can work together with school to be able to profile the different needs that will be thrown up as school reopen, given the fact that I've mentioned that disposable incomes today have been truly impacted. Besides that, we also have products for school owners. And these products include term loans, including, and these are very cost-effective facilities that are available to school owners and other educational institutions to enable them procure softwares, upscale IT, and ensure that even when they want to go into expansion, today there's the issue of social distancing. So do school need to expand? For this, there are also facilities built around capabilities to allow school owners, allow educational institutions to access facilities to be able to upscale and provide the required services of training our children for the future. I'm delighted again to talk about Edu 360. This is one of the most rugged, the most well thought out products that the bank has put together. And the Edu 360 platform is actually deployed free of charge to all schools that are on our network. This platform enables schools to reconcile payments and also can record inventories, and payments can be made bulk and other functionaries. Like I said, schools and parents can come together where the need arises to say, you know what, going forward, I want to have a standing order. I want to be paying on piecemeal. I want to be paying monthly. This product, Edu 360, allows you to do this and also gives you record to reconcile. So so every end of the month, you can actually say, how much have I received from parent A for student B? So you can have multiple children for a single parent or whatever. You can actually have somebody else pay the school fees, and all of this can be reconciled under Edu 360. We haven't left the children out in this climate. So for children, we also have products there. We have the Union Infinity and the Union Legend. The Union Infinities are for children below the ages, for ages 0 to 12, and for Union Legend are for children 13 and 18. What it does is actually encourage parents to start savings for the children and also encourage the children to imbibe saving culture very early in life. But it also comes by, these two products actually comes with multiple benefits. So the account, we pay competitive interest rates on this account. It's also loaded with lifestyle benefits such as discounts at bookstores, games arcade, cinemas. Once a child hits the milestone target, they also stand to getting a benefit as well on that account. These benefits also extend to parents who can also stand to getting financial support for school fees. It covers insurance. The benefits covers insurance premium for the children and also discounted healthcare packages at different healthcare institutions. And the debit card is actually personalized, and it's really beautiful to behold. So there are several benefits, there's several products that the bank is currently working at, and we offer really tailor-made solution to school and other stakeholders. And Union Bank today is totally committed to providing holistic support to the educational system across the entire board, whether be it school owners, teachers, and the rest of it. So our contacts will be displayed during the seminar, and we'd like to work with teachers, school owners, and parents that will require the help of Union Bank to work and partner with them to ensure that we give the necessary importance and focus to this sector that is totally pivotal to the development of Nigeria today and in the future. Once again, I want to say to everybody, thank you for signing on, and thank you for joining this seminar. And Kemi, thank you for having me, and I yield back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. As most of you would have heard, we do have an array, a suite of products and solutions for you, whether you're a parent, whether you're a school owner, an educator. So please, if you've got any questions about anything Rosemary said, she's going to be on hand towards the end after the panel discussion to answer questions about any of the products or propositions that she talked about. And like she said, our contact details will also be on the screen at the end of this, so you can reach out to us directly. So thank you again, Rosemary. And at this point, I'm very excited to introduce our key speaker, Mrs. Eniola Shakira Olajobi, who will be speaking about, her topic is Back to School, Navigating Challenges, Harnessing Opportunities. Mrs. Eniola Shakira Olajobi is the CEO of Brainy Educare Services. She's a management consultant with over a decade's experience working with major education stakeholders, parents, educators, and children. And she's here today to share with us from the wealth of her expertise. Eniola, thank you very much for joining us today, and over to you.
Thank you so very much, Kemi. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here. Union Bank executives, the entire Edu360 team, distinguished panelists, esteemed parents and educators. I feel really privileged and honored to be here. And I want to say a big thank you to Union Bank for putting this program together and for finding me worthy to give the keynote speech. Yes, resumption is finally upon us. And the honest truth is this is unlike any back to school that we've experienced before. As much as we're excited that after over 6 months, like half a year of the children being at home, we're excited to have them back in school, yet we still have so much uncertainty and fear enveloped around our preparation for back to school. And this is obviously because of the pandemic. So our ability to be able to continue to embrace the new normal and develop effective strategies as parents is part of what will determine how much of a hitch-free back to school transition we can have. Yes, and like we all know, there's always a silver lining in every cloud. So as much as there are challenges that we have to navigate, we also have a lot of opportunities to harness in the situation we found ourselves. Yes, in navigating, the first slide, please. Yes, in navigating challenges, I would say that the first thing that we need to do as parents is to be prepared for readjustment issues. And when I say readjustment issues, what do I mean? So the children have been home for so long, and yes, for a lot of them, it wasn't anything that any of us prepared for. And so for a lot of the children, it took them unawares, and a lot of questions that they had and they still have were not quite answered, or were answered in ways that they did not quite get the big picture. So the honest truth is, as much as they've coped, and that's quote and unquote, as much as they've coped with the situation, going back to school may reveal some post-traumatic stress signs, because it is traumatic for everyone, including the children. So it's important for us as parents to prepare for readjustment challenges. We want to look out for behaviors that are not usual, and we want to be able to have conversations with our children about this challenges. We want to become aware of our own emotions as adults so that we can help our children to grow their emotional wellness. Emotional health education has never been this important before. We have to take it as seriously as we take physical health, if not more. I mean, typically a 2-3-year-old already knows to have a bath every morning. So even if it's been delayed or something, they're already reminding you, mommy, daddy, can I have my bath now? Can I brush my teeth? So we already put them on the path of self-help when it comes to physical health. We have to start to do the same thing for the emotional health. We cannot continue to assume that they're too young to know. We cannot continue to teach children that the response to how are you is always fine. We have to let them know that it could be fine, but it's also okay sometimes to be sad. It's okay sometimes to be anxious. It's okay sometimes to be angry. It's not the feelings that is wrong or right. Feelings are just okay. It is the way that they are shown, the actions that come as a result of the feelings that matter. We have to start to teach children this from a very young age, because it will not only help them to realize that we cannot continue to suppress our feelings, it will also help them to name those feelings and be able to manage them better. So this is the best time to start to give emotional health education to our children. We also need to have discussions with them about safety precautions, and not just having discussions. We have to get really mindful about these discussions. We have to simulate and practice this. We all know, for example, that we shouldn't sneeze or cough into our palm, but instead we should use the flexed elbow. But how mindful are we of this? How much do we forget and we still go the whole way? So we need to have sessions with the children at home to simulate these things, to go over and over so that they get used to this standard practices. We also need to plan new routine together with our children so they understand, because quite a number of children in the last couple of months have missed out on their usual routine, bedtime routine, wake up routine, the style of all the activity that has to happen at home. We have to revisit this routine and carry the children along. Of course, it's not going to happen all at once. Next slide, please. It's not going to happen all at once. We have to be ready and willing to take baby steps, and we have to understand that the transition is going to be gradual. We have to help to boost immunity in our children, because yes, back to school is usually laden with a lot of stress for the children, and for some of them they break down, the immunity system breaks down. So it's time to increase substances like food meals such as yogurt, inclusion of olive oil and other immune boosters into the children's meal plan, so that we can help them to prepare physically for resumption. And of course, we need to be mindful of pitfalls like digital addiction, exposure to inappropriate content online like pornography, and the rest of them. During this lockdown, there's been an increase in the incidences of children who have gotten exposed to this inappropriate materials because they spend more time online. So in as much as it's important for them to be online, we have to, as parents, spend time to educate them and to let them know of the dangers online and the need for online safety to be observed at all times. We should also seek professional help if we observe that there's something unusual or there's something could be wrong. It's always better to be safe than sorry. So let us not wish problems away. Let us seek professional help if we need to. And now, talking about harnessing the opportunities that come with this type of back to school transition. The first thing is, of course, we need to practice positive perspective. We need to focus on the good side of all of this. As much as it's been very challenging, it's also come with some good sides, and we should focus on those, and we should see the opportunities that come with this. The fact that we've been able to spend more time with the children, to get to know them better, to get to see their weaknesses, and possibly help in some of these ways. We also need to be grateful and teach our children gratitude. You know, these little things are things that we tend to overlook, but honest truth is children can learn from a young age to be grateful for the everyday things that we ordinarily take for granted. As parents, we also need to become very upskilled with technology, because honest truth is schools may never again operate fully offline. One of the greatest lessons that the pandemic has come to teach us, and that should stay with us, is the fact that education should be taken far beyond the four walls of the classroom, far beyond the four walls. And this means that most schools would run a hybrid model where they would have some sessions taken online and some other sessions taken in the traditional way. So parents, please do not let us assume that, oh, thankfully it's over, we can go back to doing things as usual. Well, yes, it's over, the curve is flat, it's almost over. and the curve is flattening. We're thankful for that. However, we should still remain very upskilled with technology, because moving on, most schools will be adopting the hybrid system of education. Yes, it's also important to schedule family time to bond with our children. And if that's something that we haven't done in the last couple of months, it's never too late. It's better late than never. These children need time. They need to listen. I mean, they need to say things to us. They need us to listen to them. Too many times we're not listening. We need to listen. And when I say listen, I mean listen with our eyes, our mind, and all parts of our body to hear what they're saying and what they are not saying. It's also important to encourage our children to learn relevant skills online, and of course, cooperate with our children's school. As parents, we should see the need to partner with our children's school as very important. More than ever, there's no battlefield anywhere. The school and the parents are saddled with challenges that we've never experienced before now, and that means that there is no expert anywhere. We just need to work as a team to achieve progress with our children's learning. It is on that note that I will end this speech, and I would say that our back to school experience can and will be rewarding if we brace up to face these challenges headlong, and we do all of the needful things that we need to do to make this back to school transition as itch-free as possible. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll hand over back to Kemi. Thank you.
Thank you, Eniola. That was an insightful speech, beyond insightful. I was taking down notes as you were speaking, because you shared many nuggets, very valuable nuggets, that I'm sure our audience would have found extremely useful. Some of the key points, key things that I picked up on is that, for us to really be able to navigate this time, we can't do it without having continuous communication with our children, whether as parents, whether educators, keeping those communication lines open with the children, supporting their emotions. That's something else that you spoke about that I think we don't often think about. The fact that we should really model for our children a way for them to be able to express their emotions, whatever those emotions are, and that we should allow them to know that it's okay to sometimes say, I'm not fine, or I'm confused, or I'm scared. And then focusing on the positive, being grateful, teaching our children gratitude, us as parents as well, because again, in terms of modeling, the children pick up a lot on our own emotions. If we're anxious, if we're perpetually anxious, the children will pick up on that as well. But if we stay in a positive mode, if we focus on the positive, they will pick up on that as well. Family bonding time is important, is critical. Thank you so much, Eniola, for bringing up all these. One thing that you spoke about is digital awareness, safety. And I'm going to hold on to that thought, because it's something that I would like us to explore in the panel session as we go into the panel discussion now. It's something that I'm sure is going to come up as well. So on that note, thank you again, Eniola. And like I said, if you have questions for Eniola, she's going to be here up until the end of the session. So put your questions in the Q&A box. If it's possible, you can indicate that the question is for her. And at the end, when we have the Q&A segment, we will answer those questions at that time. So without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panel. They're going to be discussing the topic, A Parent's Guide to Navigating Re-Entry. Our first panelist that I'll be introducing today is Mrs. Biola Seriki Ayeni. Mrs. Abiola Seriki Ayeni is the Director General of the Office of Education Quality Assurance in Lagos State. So they are at the forefront of ensuring that schools are properly ready, that they have all their re-entry measures and everything in place. So she's going to be here to speak to that. We're very, very happy to have her here to share the perspective of what the government is doing at this time. The next panelist that I have the pleasure of introducing is Mr. Tulu Oshinibi. He is the chairman of the Board of Management at St. Saviour's School, Ikoyi. St. Saviour's School, Ikoyi is a British curriculum school in Lagos, catering for children from reception to year 6. Tolu is also an active father of 5 children, so he's going to be speaking to us not just as someone who has, obviously insight into what his school in particular is doing to prepare or to navigate these times, but also as a father, as a parent, he'll be sharing his perspective as well. Thank you so much, Tolu, for joining us today. Next up, Mrs. Faye Ojugo. Mrs. Ojugo is the head of school at the Lekki campus of Green Springs, which is one of the leading British international schools in Nigeria. She'll be sharing her expertise as an educator, as someone also who is in the trenches of this, everything that's going on in the education sector. She'll be talking to us about what her school in particular is doing to support children, to support the students through this transition. And then we have Dr. Oge Ilegune. Dr. Oge is the Director of Clinical Services and the Principal Clinician for Dennis Ashley Clinic. She's also the Head of Strategy Development and Outreach at the Lakeshore Cancer Center in Lagos. She is obviously here to talk to us from the medical perspective. What are the things to ensure we need to do to ensure that we maintain health standards in schools and even at home? She's also a mother, so she has that perspective as well, and we are keen to hear what her contributions to the panel discussion. And last but not the least, it's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Tami Olajide. Ms. Olajide is a child psychologist and the founder of Mommy Clinic Global Services, an online platform that provides strategies and result-driven solutions to the challenges of raising children. So again, she's a mom, she's a child psychologist, and she has an online platform where she supports other parents as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and that's our panel for today. We're going to go right into the panel discussion now. Again, let me remind you, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll take your questions during the Q&A segment. If you want to indicate who the question is for, please go ahead and do so. If it's a general question, then that's fine. Any one of the panelists will take the questions. So, I'm going to start with Mr. Oshinibi, with Tolu actually. Tolu, as a parent yourself, what would you say are the major concerns that parents have concerning the plans to reopen schools after about 6 months where, everyone's been away from physical schools? And of course, we have a lot of anxiety among parents about the plans to reopen schools despite the ongoing threat of COVID-19. So while, as Eniola said, the curve is flattening, it's certainly not over, and parents are understandably anxious. So what would you say are the major concerns that parents have at this time? Tolu?
Right. Good morning, Kemi, and thank you to you and Union Bank for inviting me to this event. So my views are 2 perspectives, as a parent, as you said, and also as a board chairman of a school. I think fundamentally it's about the safety and well-being of our children. I mean, that's priority in any parent's mind. And linked with that is the readiness of each school, or the readiness of the school to be open. So unfortunately, that is nearly always a personal perspective, because irrespective of what a school communicates, you as a parent, you're hyper concerned and paranoid, and just wanting to ensure that the school is prepared and ready. So I think those are the 2 key things. And one that's dealt with by how a school communicates, and its schools have to over communicate. I think parents also have to actively engage their schools to get the assurance they need. In my own personal capacity as a parent, my children are more than ready to go back to school. They're done with being at home. They've really had enough. And some of them, they've reacted differently to their home learning experience. So I have a teenage daughter who we've recently realized that actually she didn't take too well to home learning. We thought everything was fine, but it's reflected in her performance. Yeah. You've got the others who was kind of like a mini holiday to them. And again, there's probably something lacking there and a lot of catching up to do. So I have a mixed bag of experience with the children on how they've done with home learning. But the common theme across all of them is they are ready to go back to school. They simply miss that environment and the routine and the structure and their friends and all of those things that they thrive on, because we are social animals. Now it's up to us as parents to make sure that, look, one, we don't transmit our fears and concern to the children, because we often do that and we're saying, well, the children are ready. Well, actually, it's us parents who aren't ready. Yeah, so we need to be conscious of that. And the second thing is actively engage each child to say, look, this is what's going on. Get a sense of how they are, how they feel, and where necessary, reassure. And where we think, okay, you know what, my child seems to be ready, then we satisfy ourselves that, look, the school has done everything it can, and more importantly, not transmit our fears as adults and parents to the children, because they pick up on that very, very quickly.
Excellent. You raised a lot of very, very important themes, I'll say, that I'm sure will recur as we continue in this discussion. One of those is, not transmitting our own fears to the children, but also, coming to understand that, we keep talking about online school, but are we really sure that the children are adapting well, even in the online environment? And that this is going to bring me to a follow-on question to Tami as a child psychologist. And then I think I'm going to also ask Faye as an educator. What are the potential issues that parents and educators face in trying to get the children settled back, where just some of them are maybe just feeling settled in this online learning? They are just starting to get comfortable with what we've been doing, and now we're coming and we're disrupting it again, and going into both physical school or blended learning. So what are some of the potential issues that parents should look out for as we start this new phase? So I'll let Tami answer first, and then Faye, then you can answer as well as an educator.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here. Something we need to be really aware of as parents is we need to be patient. Like, patient has to be the first thing on our list. So let me give an example. My kids are back in school online, definitely, but imagine having that setting. You are more tempted to want to say, oh, you need to do your chores, you need to do this work, because they're in the house, but we need to wear that cap. So whether it's online you're going for or the on-site, you need to wear the cap and say, when my kids are learning at home, they are learning is like school. So it's not home any longer for that period of time. And you have to be extremely patient. It's not the time to start to shout and nag. So imagine us being with these kids for basically about 6 months. You've experienced a new side, to your children. Your children have also seen another side of their parents, because we're practically locked down. So it's not the time, before, even if they were on holidays, maybe they would go and visit friends, they would go to parks, but we were practically in each other's faces. So these children have seen one side of you and seen maybe a loving and doting dad, which they've never seen before. So imagine now going back to school, and all that is they can hear now is constant nagging and shout, because you need to prepare them for school. So the kids will now start to respond in a way that, okay, maybe school is the enemy in the first instance, because they've never experienced that before. So you don't want them to start to see learning and school as the enemy, because mommy and daddy are not responding the way they've been responding in the past 6 months. So what we want to ensure is, yes, it would be very tough, because it was even tough. That's why with the routine that we've got in place, the first week was tough, but you have to be patient. Even if they are driving you crazy, because it's not easy, especially if you have to, school runs, how we used to do, shouting here and there, get in the car. Imagine we didn't have to do that for so many months. Now we would have to start to do that. So what I would encourage, parents to be prepared with is create routines, schedules, and start to prepare now. If you've not done that now, start today, because it would definitely benefit you and the children. And for the teachers, they would experience a lot of distraction, because they've not, even with the children that have been home, being engaged with the online, learning, they are still being distracted. So now in the school system, they've not seen their friends for a while. They've not seen outside. Many children have not been outside for a very long time. So imagine them putting them in the four walls of a classroom again. So teachers, educators have to be extremely patient, at least the first 1 to 2 weeks, and expect that these children will be distracted. They will be absent-minded. So what are we going to do as educators? Find fun ways to bring them back to school. So you can do something like competitions, and it's like group competitions, because some children too will be going through a lot. Some children are thinking they are fatter, they're not looking as nice as they were looking. So those are the things going on in the minds of the children. So to ease them back into learning, competition in the sense that something to bring back, learning. Oh, what did you learn in the past, few months, and make it group, so that teamwork is built back, because some children will be withdrawn. So to bring them back in, teachers need to do that. But patience is really, really important to help the psychological state of the children at this time.
Thank you, Tami. Thank you. Again, I was taking notes that patience seems to be the watchword. I think patience on the part of everyone concerned, exercising patience, realizing that we're really in a dynamic environment, and that nothing is quite, yesterday is different from today, today is going to be different from tomorrow. And so we have to be patient with our children, and set expectations that are not too lofty, especially as we start in, which brings me to Faye. Tami said for some of the children, they may begin to see school as the enemy, that, now that we're going back to physical school, my crazy mommy is back. Or the mommy or the daddy who used to harass me is back. And so how are the schools preparing to welcome the children back into the physical environment, and to, ease whatever fears or trepidation they may have?
Thank you very much, Kemi, and to Union Bank for having me, and thank you to everyone. So basically, I think, like Tami said, and I think Mr. Oshinibi also alluded to it, one of the greatest challenges will be getting the children back into the routine, because again, different homes with different expectations and things that have happened over the past 6 months. So children probably have been sleeping very late. Now they have to wake up early. So what I would say is, for those who still have, let's say, a week before school resumes, it's like a boot camp. So create the scenario. Even if your children are not going to school on Monday, for instance, assume they are going to school on Monday. Get them to bed early enough on Sunday. Let them wake up at the proper time, and let them start getting used to, little by little, the routine of, we need to get back to physical school. So that really is going to be one of the greatest challenges, both on the side of the parents and also for the children. But again, as we work with the children with understanding, as we also work knowing that, okay, they need to get back to school, we need to settle them in. So what do we need to do? So as we begin to put those things in place, I guess we'll be fine. And for us at our school, of course, I'm sure schools all over, we're working on our schedules, we're looking at all of the things that need to happen. And we are aware of the fact that even though we've been online, for schools that have been online 100%, so the children are sort of used to school in a way, even though they are not used to the routine as we would have it in a physical school. But because even with the online, we had cases where there was a lot going on in the background of the children, even though they are supposed to be in school in quotes. So the children are used to online, but now we're talking about physical school. So both, on the side of the parents and educators, we must understand that we need to invest a lot in terms of understanding where the students are and helping them get used to, okay, we're back to school. And like somebody said earlier, the children are actually very excited. The truth is they really don't have a lot of anxieties, unlike adults. So I think the anxiety is with us adults, with the safety aspect and other things. And I think one of the major issues that educators will have to grapple with, and indeed parents, is to identify and see what to do about gaps that may be in the learning of the children. Because learning online, some got onto it, like a house on fire. They were able to log on and get on with it because they already had the technical skills to navigate the various online platforms. For some, it was a learning curve. And for some, maybe parents didn't get on site on time. And we also have situations where parents may not even have leveraged the online opportunity. So definitely children will be at different stages in their learning. So I think one of the things that every school must do, and parents must also engage with schools to say, okay, what are you seeing? So as you engage with my child, what are you seeing? So every school must ensure that a baseline test is done, because it's like a house. A good education is like building a good house. You've got to lay a solid foundation, and then it's block upon block. So if there are gaps, you've left out a portion where you're supposed to put certain blocks, the integrity of that house is in question. It's going to be questionable. So it is with the learning of our children. The first thing that must happen is to check, do a baseline test and check where there are gaps and be sure that they are ready for the new learning. So particularly in the core subjects, English, maths, and science, because really they form the bedrock of every other thing. So immediately those gaps are identified, and it will be different for different children. So some, the gaps may be this, little. For some, it may be huge, maybe because they were not on site with the online learning at all. But it will be the responsibility of every teacher to ensure that those gaps are plugged, so that whatever it is we're trying to build on whatever foundation is there, we are building something solid. If not, the child may sit in class, but they are not understanding what you're teaching. They are lost. So it is very critical that we identify those gaps. And I think also for me, another issue which I think is important will be helping the students and even parents understand the protocols that we have put in place and comply with those protocols. And it is so important because it doesn't matter what schools have put in place. If the students are not taking it seriously and they are not complying and parents are not reinforcing those protocols, we are all going to be exposed to the risk. And this is one time I line up with those who say that when you do something for 21 days, it becomes a habit. So I'm saying to myself, and I'm saying to all educators on this call, and that's the same thing I'll be saying to colleagues, the first 3 weeks of physical school will be extremely important. So everything we have put in place, following all the guidelines that have been spelled out to us and the ones we've added our schools, we must ensure compliance. It's going to be tough. It's like starting a new session and you have to sort of agree the ground rules. It's going to be tough, but we must commit to it and ensure that every adult is complying so that students are learning and seeing the adults model, whether it's wearing the mask, the proper hand washing, and all of the things we've put in place. So the first 3 weeks are very critical. And I'll please ask that parents also reinforce that at home. So you also put a routine in place. Let there be a timetable for hand washing at home, for example, and all of the other things. And as we work together, because school cannot do it alone, parents cannot do it alone, we must collaborate one with another to protect one another. So as we collaborate, I'm sure we're going to beat this and we'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faye. Again, I picked up a lot from what you said, but I will come in from the last few points that you mentioned, which had to do with protocols and guidelines that schools have put in place. And that brings me directly to you, Abiola. We know that Lagos State in particular, the government across the country has worked really hard and done really well to get us through this pandemic. And we acknowledge the efforts that our government have made in this area. Here in Lagos, your office has been working very closely with schools to ensure their readiness for safe re-entry. Can you give us an update on the progress so far? Are there any updates you'd like to share with parents, maybe to reassure parents that of the readiness of schools and all the protocols again and the measures that have been put in place to ensure safety?
Yes, thank you so much for having me this morning. Thank you, my panelists. My name is Biola Seriki Ayeni, Director General, Office of Education Quality Assurance, Lagos State Government. And what we do is we ensure quality in all our schools, both public and private, below tertiary level. When this COVID-19 came and it really swept everyone off of their feet, we really had to think through the opportunities that we found to be existent in this space. Yes, challenges, but specifically the opportunities. We know that before the COVID pandemic, we wanted to have information on schools. So in terms of having schools registered and having them updated, we wanted to get that information. So we also knew that we had to get information at some point about our teachers. During this COVID-19, it revealed a further opportunity and need to have direct access to our parents, because this was really the first time that schools and parents were at loggerheads sometimes. So as government realizing that we typically have to go through our schools to get to our parents, it was really an eye-opener, and it really had us thinking through how can we serve, our families, and of course, as a result of that, supporting the families and supporting our students fully and completely. So there were a lot of things that were revealed during this time. So when we started thinking about reopening and what it would be, we had to sort of think about how we can, use all of these things, these holistic components that we know to really help and include in the reopening process. So what we did is we used the federal government guidelines on reopening. We stuck to that because we know that that was carefully created. And what we did is we fleshed out practical things like a self-assessment form, like bulleted guidelines that came as a result of that. And we use them as supplemental guides for our schools. So right now, as the schools are reopening, they've had access to the federal government guidelines, I believe, since July. And we have started our own reopening process just a few weeks ago. So with that process, schools need to register, teachers need to register. We've created a course, an online course, 1 hour course that is based on the federal government guidelines, just to make sure that you've actually gone through it. There's an assessment that's embedded there, and when you take that assessment, you get a certificate. Now, we are requiring that schools and all their teachers take it, but that if you want to get clearance, you need to upload your certificates of the lead of the school, and at least 3 other staff need to be uploaded. We need evidence that you and your teachers have taken this course, number 1. Number 2, you have to upload plans. So we realize that if we want schools to reopen, stay open, and we want schools to have a culture where they're comfortable closing, even if it's briefly, that there are certain things that need to be in place. And these things that need to be in place are centered on 4 major types of plans. One is having operational plans, so how children are going to walk in the hallway, stickers on the ground, you've measured out your spaces, your floor plans, things like that, right? The second types of plans are communication plans. So I have heard this with the other speakers. How are you communicating with your families? How frequently are you communicating with them? How do you get very important up-to-date information to them? So knowing what the communication plans is of the school to both parents, families, but also community stakeholders. What are your communication plans? Then thirdly, what are your learning plans? We know that for sure schooling right now is hybrid, and it's going to probably be like that for a while. So if the event school needs to close again, we're not going to go back to March 23rd when schools were closed. We need to be ready. So we need to know what the plans are for distance learning, for blended learning. So we need to know that as government. The last one is the health and safety. So we need to know that you have health and safety information on ground, you have the protocols, you have a point person in your school that is in charge of this, sanitation schedules, like how frequently the bathrooms are being cleaned. So just having all of those documents. So when we now have that, we will now come to your school. That's at the very last stage. It's an ongoing process, given the number of schools that we have in the state, but we know that we are expecting at the very least that our schools are prepared using the guidelines. They have done the 1-hour course, taken the assessment, gotten a certificate. And then another thing that we've embedded into the reopening process is the importance of child protection. So the Office of Education Quality Assurance has collaborated with a DSVRT under the Ministry of Justice to create a course. That's a 4-hour course, a child safeguarding and child protection course. So embedding that also into the reopening process so that teachers and school leaders also have to take that course with a certificate. So I'll just stop there for now.
Wow. I think for people who are listening, a lot of people will be maybe surprised at the level of detail that your office has gone into to ensure readiness and on the part of the schools, and to prioritize the safety of all the stakeholders. I hope that this has, begun to maybe quell some of the anxieties that parents are feeling as schools begin to reopen. But I'm going to now ask you, Tulu, especially given all of these measures that Abiola outlined, how can you share with us some of the specific steps that your school has taken to ensure that you are ready to have the children back, to ready to open, and to ensure that your premises are safe for everyone?
Okay, thank you, Kemi. As some of my fellow panelists have mentioned, there's going to be a lot of change in terms of school protocols and things like that. So what we've decided to do as St. Saviour's Ikoyi is to start on a hybrid basis, which means essentially that at any time about 45% of the students will be online while the remainder are at school, and they rotate on a weekly basis. So specifically, primary 6 children will be at school fully because the schools got together and prepared for common entrance exams of the schools they typically apply to, which start as early as late November, early December. And a big value proposition is to get those children ready. Yeah. And then those who are coming into primary school for the first year, because of the need to build social cohesion, we want all of the new entrants in school at the same time. But the years in between up to primary 5, we split them in half online and half at home. The following week they rotate. The reason we're doing that is we realize that it will take time for staff, and when I say staff, including non-teaching staff, so school staff, teachers, the students, to get used to the new protocols. And we will continue on that hybrid model for as long as the board thinks it's necessary and until the school leadership team is satisfied that everybody's used to the new models of working. What it also does is that parents who are particularly concerned have the option of their child being online subject to school approval throughout. But we want to minimize that because the implication of that is that each week that child is, interacting with a different teacher, if you understand. So only in rare cases will that happen. So having established that model of hybrid, half at home, half at school, the next thing, you can split our focus into 2 themes. Each class being a self-contained bubble and also a strong focus on hygiene. So what do I mean self-contained bubble? To the extent possible, we want to keep all of the children in each class with as limited interaction as possible with others. So it means even coming into school, you've got different start times for each year group. Leaving school, you've got different finish time for each year group. You've got different break times for each year group. Yeah? And then within each class, we've had to rearrange the classroom seating structure where they're now in rows. Each child will have a dedicated table and chair. So at any time, you know who's been sitting beside whom in case you need to trace and track and all of those things. Each child will have their own bag of pencils, erasers, sharpeners, rulers, labeled, put in a Ziploc bag. They don't take it home at the end of the day. It's in school. Yeah. Regular routine of hand washing, sanitizing, and all of those things at various transition points. So after break, when they're moving from one classroom to the other, and that's part of what the teachers will be enforcing to make sure that happens. On the hygiene side, we will not allow parents in school. Any communication between parents and staff will be, electronic. You can phone, you can send an email, etc. Only in absolutely, important situations and with the approval of maybe the head teacher or the deputy head will a parent be allowed inside the school premises, because that's the only way we can ensure that we track who's coming in and who's going out. Other things we've done is having appropriate, spaces where we can isolate a child or staff if it's needed. We're talking a very thick protocol book that everybody needs to get familiar with. Even staff, the way they use the staff room will be on a staggered basis to minimize, to try to create some sense of social distancing. It's awkward if you have teachers in a classroom wearing a mask, so we've got transparent visors for them when they're in the classroom. Even the classroom structure, the key thing is ventilation. Yeah. So our classrooms have air conditioners, but only in absolutely serious cases will we use them, because we know ventilation is key. So ventilation in the classrooms and all of that, we're talking one-way systems. So in terms of even walking around the school, it's a one-way system across the entire school. Again, it takes time to get used to that, which is part of why we've introduced this hybrid model of saying, let's have half the children at home until everybody gets used to this new system. Yeah. So key focus is hygiene and bubbles. Keep it self-contained, extra strong focus on hygiene, make sure we have enough resources in school, soap, safe water, disinfectants, everything we stocked up. Yeah. There's a major supply chain going on there. And the plan is flexible enough to change very, very quickly if necessary. So that flexibility is key. And it's a plan that has involved the board of management, the trustees, that are essentially the owners of the school. So across the entire governance structure, everybody is fully aware of what needs to happen and what is going on. And most importantly, having that built-in flexibility, because we recognize that, look, things can change at any time and we need to be able to respond quickly. So let me pause there.
Thank you, Tulu. You brought up a lot, but while you were speaking, I was thinking, my goodness, and this is again going to bring me to you, Faye, as you answer the question. I wanted you to answer it from a focus of, for me, in my mind as a parent, a big part of education for children is play and, physical interaction, being able to interact with each other. But when we talk about, the realities do demand all these strict hygiene, these bubbles. But I wonder, how are you as educators taking into account this need, especially that the younger children do have to play, to get out, to be physical with each other, to run around as well. So, Faye, please tell us what some of the best practices Green Springs is putting in place, but also bearing in mind the needs, the social needs that children have as part of their development.
Thank you again, Kemi. And thank God, because I was thinking you were going to ask me to say, talk about what we're putting in place, because exactly what Mr. Oshinibi said, everything. And so in terms of play, which really is one of the major things, at one of our town hall meetings this week, because we've been engaging very much with our parents just to help them to understand what we're doing. and to get them on side, because again, communication is key, as we've all said. So that was one of the things that we actually spoke about. And the reality is that even for play, for now, unfortunately, it cannot be what it used to be. So for instance, for the younger children, so they love their slides, you know, the swings and all of the play, all the things in the play areas. But the truth is, for starters, we are going to sort of keep those cordoned off just until they get used to the routine and they understand the importance of, you know, taking that personal responsibility, even if I have to touch somebody or do something, the importance of washing my hands and all that. So we have our staggered recess times, and the bubbles are very critical. And what we are saying to ourselves is to ensure that the integrity of each bubble is not tampered with. And what does that mean to us? So for instance, by the time we swing into the blended learning where we have the groups coming, so each class group is a bubble in itself. And what that means is, of course, they're going to be in the same space. They're having their lunch together in the same space. They are learning together in the same space, even though we're going to follow the guidelines, you know, the masks on, and of course, the teachers having their shields and the rest of that. They are going out for recess together. So some of the things we're thinking is, yes, they can run around, because particularly for the very young children, the years 1, year 2, they can run around. But what we're saying to ourselves is we have to be very creative in the kind of play they can engage in. So for instance, in other places, we know, places like France, you know, in other countries, what they've done is they have, even outside during recess, so you have your play circle, so to say. Even though you are outside, you can talk with your friends, you don't have to, one of the things that the Office of Education Quality Assurance has encouraged schools to do is to have mask breaks where the students can go out and actually get a breather, so to say, without having to have their masks on. So you get to sort of express yourself, but you really can't touch and the rest of the things that children like. And that is why, again, we've got to pay attention to the psychological aspect of this. But the fact that they are even coming back to school and they can see each other beyond the devices, it's already a big gain. So as we watch, you know, what the scenario is looking like, as we see what data is telling us, we'll be able to modify as we go on. But for starters, we're going to be very careful because we're going to limit contact. Even in terms of sports, we're saying that contact sports, for now, we can't have them because we really want to minimize the risk. So we're going to take it one step at a time and just see how things go.
Thank you, Faye. I think the key thing that you've shared, and that's recurring here, is just being able to adjust, to be flexible in your approach. And Tulu also mentioned having a system in place that's easily, where it's not rigid. So if there's a need, you can modify it quickly and adjust as required. But now I'm going to ask the doctor in the house, because we've been talking a lot of, I won't say theory, but I think none of us here is a medical doctor except Dr. Oge. So we want to get your perspective. What can parents and educators do to ensure that children are healthy and safe, whether they're in school or whether they're at home during these times?
Thank you very much, Kemi, and thank you to Union Bank for organizing this. I'd like to say that it's a real pleasure to be here because I'm actually learning. I'm taking notes as I've listened to my fellow panelists, and I'm sure once the audience start, fielding questions, I'm also going to continue taking notes. What's been very clear during the pandemic is that this has become a crisis that has sort of grown tentacles. It's not something that one sector of the society has had to deal with alone. You know, listening to everyone, it's just been amazing to hear the level of detailing that, you know, the education, Lagos State, everybody, the psychologists, you know, people are thinking. And I think we are gradually going from what I would describe as the clinical, you know, when we were very obsessed with the symptoms and all the measures were being put in place. We've sort of evolved to asking questions about practical measures of living in what has been described as a near normal. So to get back to the question, and I think it's also important to note that fortunately, and I think maybe in years' time to come, we'll find out why out of all the, the people who have come down with the infection, COVID-19 infection, that children have actually constituted just about 8.5%. And even in that case, we found that children have not been as ill as other people. However, I think that the measures that even adults are taking have to be implemented. And what can parents, especially parents, because at the moment, the children are at home, what can parents do to ensure this safety continues? One of the things, and I was listening to some of the speakers, earlier speakers, parents themselves have to be armed with good information. Because of the social media, I think we've all been aware of misinformation that have circulated, both about the virus and what people should actually do. Then again, the psychologist had mentioned, also parents should address their own fears first. So if you are fearful, you need to explore what you're afraid of and try to find solutions, because the children are able to get the vibes as well. Now, then that brings us to communication. I think communication has formed a great part of the measures in place, whether it's education, whether it's what the government is doing, and whether it's, what the health sector, the doctors and the nurses have been doing. Parents will need to communicate what the virus is to the children in a language and manner that they understand, also taking into consideration age appropriateness. So if you have a 3-year-old at home, the way you would describe this situation, the whole pandemic, is going to be different from the discussion you'll be having with your teenagers. I think it's very important. It's not a general sort of description, oh, this is the virus and this is what you have to do. You have to make sure that the children actually understand it, and they understand it in a way that is age appropriate. Luckily, over the past 6 months or 7 months that we've been dealing with this virus, materials have been developed, infographics, fun ways of actually communicating that to the children. The other thing is for parents to be sure that the communication that they are also imparting, and I mean, the schools as well are very well supported by, local, the government having measures, for parents to be sure that the information that they have is actually verified, and to also discourage misinformation in the home. So encouraging the children to ask those questions, to bring up maybe concerns that they've heard, and walking through to make sure that they go away with the right answers. Now, I think by now, we might assume the children, the adults, the schools already know the whole preventive measures, social distancing, wearing the mask, appropriate disposal, hand washing, sanitizing. Most people, if you tap them when they are asleep, could actually reel off all that. But there's also that danger of human nature where you get used to a situation and then you begin to, once people heard lockdown was taken off, the ban was lifted, if you go out there, you would notice actually there's a degree of laxity that has come into the system, whether it's in the shops, whether it's in the church, whether it's outside public transport. So the one key thing the parents and the schools also have to do is that constant reinforcing. You keep going through, have infographics pasted around the school so that it's hitting the eye, the children can see that. And it's wonderful to hear, the St. Xavier and Green Springs, all the measures that are already in place to make sure that that continues. And that also has to be done at home. The other thing is to encourage the children to report early symptoms of being unwell. It's sort of an assumption to think that every illness now is a COVID-related illness. And, we've had very sad situations where people have actually been handled in a COVID-like situation, and they've actually passed on when they actually had other illnesses. So it's important to discuss with the children so that they also know, if I'm feeling unwell, I'm not going to assume, oh, I have malaria, or they need to be open, speak to moms, you know, speak to dad, explain, this is how I feel. Don't keep it away, or even the fear that, oh, if I say I have this, it might be COVID, maybe I should keep quiet about it. So there should be that openness, you know, speaking and explaining to the children that it's not everything that will be COVID, but it's important that we make sure that you're okay. The other thing is role play. You know, there's a lot of play in child development. I'm not a child development specialist, but even as a doctor and as a parent, what we found is when you play out different scenarios, it actually sticks better. I mean, most facilities, most organizations even do, you know, use that tool of role play. So it's important in terms of communication at home that, you know, you play out different scenarios, you tell the child, so if this happens, what do you think you should do? If that happens, what do you think you should do? And these scenarios will probably deal with situations of increased risk and situations of decreased risk, so that the child can, you know, find ways of distinguishing the two. The other thing as well is not talking down. You know, sometimes as adults, we think that the children don't understand what's going on. You know, I have a 13-year-old son, and occasionally he pipes up and you realize he's been listening to what you've been saying, he's overhearing conversations, and it's very important that the children are brought into that circle of communication. Have home meetings, you know, where even the child becomes the leader for that particular meeting. And the whole idea is to engage in discussing home measures, conversations, you know, and using that to explore emotions, because there's a lot of emphasis on physical health, or staying safe from COVID, but there's a lot going on in the children's mind emotionally as well. You know, many people have mentioned the fact that the children have been, in a way, you know, detached from their friends. They, you know, they have fears and concerns. When I see my friend, what should I do? Should I shake hands? Should I hug? And it's very important that all that is explored. Again, we've talked about the social media, digital safety, and, you know, monitoring to make sure that the children are also not being exposed to a lot of information. So I think there's a lot one could, you know, talk about here, but these are some of the basic things that both the parents and the schools can also concentrate on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oge, for that comprehensive response. I feel like at this point, if we ended the webinar here, I think we'd have gotten more than enough information. We only have about 10 minutes, and I haven't taken any question from the audience, and I myself still have so many questions. So I'll just say I have 1 or 2 more questions, then I'll take questions from the audience, but if we can just keep our answers at this point extremely concise so that we can accommodate the questions from the audience. I wanted to ask in all of this, and this is a question that I'm not sure who is best placed to take it. Maybe Faye from a school educator's perspective, maybe Abiola from the regulator's perspective, I don't know. But how are schools accommodating in all of these measures that you're putting in place? How are you accommodating children who have special needs, children who are maybe physically impaired in one way or the other, or who have pre-existing health conditions? So I put that question to Faye, Abiola, or even Tulu, or anybody who wants to take it very quickly.
Okay, thank you. Let me just add a bit to that. I'll say something about that. So for the special needs children, one of the things we have said in our school is that for the core students, we're going to have them come on site daily because we understand that they need a lot of support. So following all the guidelines, of course, we're going to have them come into school so that their therapists can work with them, so that we can, because again, for the parents, quite a number of them really did not know how to support them over these months of, you know, schools being shut down. So we understand that a lot of learning actually, you know, has not taken place for children in this category. So we're going to have them coming on site. So even though we're going to adopt the blended learning approach, but for them, they will be coming on site daily so that we can give them full support. Now, the other part of the question, oh dear me.
I said children who have maybe physical, who are physical impairments, so ensuring that they're able to be accommodated in these plans that schools have put in place, in the measures that have put in place, and children with maybe pre-existing medical conditions as
Very
well.
good. Yeah. So I think the children with who have impairment will also fall in the category of the core of students with core learning needs. For example, at Green Springs, we have a special needs school that is, you know, even the outlay is dedicated to supporting children with who are on wheelchairs, for example. So all of that has been taken into cognizance. Now, for those with underlying health conditions, and again, one of the things we've said to our parents is, of course, for children with underlying conditions, we are encouraging families to take the decision to keep them online, for example, or even families are saying, I'd rather have my child online. So for us at school, with the blended learning, what we're working to do is to stream life from our classrooms. So we're increasing our technology, the infrastructure, to ensure that when lessons are going on in class and students are on site, those who are 100% online are not missing out, so to say, even though we don't want to encourage them staying online perpetually. But if a child has underlying health conditions that will put them at greater risk, would rather they are safe, you know, than have them come into school. So we're increasing our the technology infrastructure at our school to ensure that we can stream those lessons live so that you can engage with that even from home and ensure that you're not missing out so much on that. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Faye. It's good to know that, you know, that's again part of all the things that have been so carefully thought out, that you've also have plans. And I'm sure if I asked Tulu the same question, he would tell me that St. Saviour's too has those sorts of measures in place to ensure that there is equal access for every student. And speaking of equal access, I think my last question for the panel is going to go to Abiola, because this panel, unfortunately, has been very skewed towards the private school sector. But we have, obviously, under your oversight, Abiola, you have the public schools as well. And I just wanted to know what plans you have, or what measures you're putting in place for the government-owned schools, and to ensure that children in those schools are not being left behind.
Well,
and very quickly again, because now we're down to about 5 minutes.
Okay, so let me try to address that. So, you know, in Lagos, our schooling demographic is quite interesting because we have people coming into Lagos all the time. So our population makes it a bit challenging. But it's interesting to know that in all the over 20,000 schools we have in the state, only about 1,634 are public. So majority of our schools in the state are obviously private, number one, and even within private, very minute percentage of the schools that are private, I like Green Springs or, you know, St. Saviour's. Majority of our schools are low-cost private schools, and we have schools of 100 naira a day, 50 naira a day. So even when we're thinking about private versus public, there is a socio-economic, you know, discrepancy that we need to address, that even all private schools are not the same. So with that being said, we know that it's very important to have high standards across and use these standards to drive and to inform us of the importance of quality in our schools. So I know that someone had mentioned this issue of special needs, and I just want to address that very, very quickly. And that's why the plans are so important, right? Because you need to be able to differentiate for your different level of students. So back to what government is doing, we know that our population within public school is much, given the infrastructure. So again, they also have to go through this same process. So what we've done, I think, within our offices to actually make sure that the standards are the same, and it's the same across the board. It's not different for public, it's not different for private, it's not different for low cost, but have a set of standards and plans that are in place that set the tone, but that there is some flexibility where there can be flexibility, for instance. So for public schools, as soon as kids come in, they're undergoing some sort of lesson for like the first month. We're gathering baseline assessment information as soon as they come in, because they've been away for so long and we really don't know where their learning is. And then we're going to target and tailor the learning as a result of that. So I think generally when I think of what our office does and what we're doing for public schools, I think what we can really do is just set high standards, right? So not have a different set of standards for public school and a different set for private schools, but have high standards, meet schools where they are. So schools are at different spaces, leadership, teachers, they're at different level of quality and access to resources. So really have that support aspect in meeting people where they are. So in particular, what we've been doing was we've been creating learning packs. We know that a lot of students don't have access to TV, radio, technology, and data or devices. So we have learning packs that will be distributed in the next coming weeks that we're going to give to children that don't have access to that. And then children that have minimal access to technology, we're setting up Telegram classes where they'll be manned by volunteer or public school teachers that will be on a stipend. And they will have access to content, the same level of content. They'll have it online for a few hours when they have access to technology. And then the last part of that is a learning management system for children that have a lot of access to technology, but that their schools want to buy in or leverage off of government resources. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Abiola. I'm looking at the questions from the audience now, and I would say that 90% of the questions are actually for you, Abiola. And I almost feel like we need to have another session where you come back, because I think there is a lot of, I'm seeing a lot of people being surprised about your office, what you're doing, the level of attention, the detail, and people are asking so many questions. So I think there is an opportunity here, which we need to, there's obviously a gap in communication, which we'll try to address. But there's one question, and I'm going to ask that question to Eniola. Somebody wanted to know what we can do, the strategies, and I'm going to use this to close out because it's a good way to close out. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So Eniola, you're going to have to answer this in 60 seconds. The top 3 strategies to ensure a child's emotional well-being as we go back to school. And I also want you to quickly address how we can ensure that online learning, as children are more and more online, that we're able to make sure that they're safe online. It was a question that I wanted to ask Tulu and Faye as well, how schools are ensuring that children are safe online. But I'll let you answer that question, Eniola, as we wrap up. Strategies to ensure a child's emotional well-being online and in physical school.
Right. Thank you so much, Kemi. Okay, so strategies to ensure that emotional wellness is in place. I would say basically still begins with feelings. We want to help children identify, then express and manage feelings. So simple activities, as it depends on the age of the child as well. So a 3-year-old, for example, you could make faces. How do I look? What am I doing? So they're able to name these feelings to be able to tame the ones that need to be tamed. We can have activities around affirmations. You can ask the children to write down 5 things they're looking forward to in school. I'm going to see my friends again. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then you want them to go through these affirmations, because all of these things is what would ensure the emotional readiness for school. You may also want to have a gratitude challenge at home, or a countdown to school. So for schools that are resuming on the 21st, it's just 2 days to school. So you could do a 2-day countdown. Okay, it's 2 days to go. what am I excited about? What am I looking forward to? And then it's one day to go. So it just has to do with a lot of communication, and we have to ensure that we engage them. And sometimes, especially if it's not something we've been doing before now, we have to be ready to be vulnerable so that we can really connect with the children. Because if there's no connection and you're asking, how do you feel about resumption? They're just going to say, fine, the same fine that we've always, taught them to say. So it's important to really connect with them. And then secondly, about ensuring safety, I believe that the most practical step to ensure safety is to educate the children, because a lot of times when we try as adults to go above them to get some things or to lock this and lock that, I tell you, these children are super smart. They're digital beings, and so they tend to be able to do it better than us most times. We've seen organizations like Microsoft employ children because they could do or uncode things that adults could not do. So rather than trying to hide things away from children, my approach has always been to educate them so they know the danger they're in and they can avoid it. And this is something we must do both in the schools and at home. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eniola. I've just made a unilateral decision that will go 10 minutes over just because there's so many questions, and I feel like it's unfair. We haven't taken questions from the audience. I have a question for you, Tami, Mommy Clinic. Somebody wants to know how to tell if your child is anxious or fearful or has any negative experiences or emotions. How do you tell, and how do you work with that child? That's a question from the audience.
Okay, thank you so much. So,
and sorry, Tim, 30 seconds, please.
Okay, so how to identify children, anxious children. Many of them become, withdrawn. Some of them, they look sad. Some of them are quiet. Some of them cry. So you have to, look between the lines. Don't be too carried away. Yes, we're saying that these children are excited to go back to school, but please, expectations really matter. Let us make that conversation of what they're going to see in school, because what is in their heads is not what they're going to meet at school, and which will definitely affect them psychologically. So if we're able to do that as parents, and also encourage them, when you're sad, when you're upset, when you get to school, a teacher speaks to you in a certain way, because they're going to experience all this. Your friends are not responding to you in a certain way. I'm here for you. Please talk to me. Because if you don't open that line of conversation, your children will not be able to say that. Because what we've noticed with some parents is some parents don't even see it, and the children would not talk about it. So that's why you have to be really alert. And when you notice those with withdrawal syndrome or sadness or something, call your child, speak to your child, and it's not one-off conversations. These conversations you have to make it regularly, and constantly follow up as well with your children, and they would come around. But it has to be, you have to open up lines of conversation, because many times we as parents, we always wait for the children to talk. Many of them would not talk if you don't ask them, and it's not a yes or no answer. Drill in. When you drill in, trust me, your children would open up and they would say what is wrong. And if you cannot address it, please seek the help of professionals. And one more thing as well, with educators, with parents, children will start to sneak, gadgets back to school. You have to be really alert. You want to do quick checks as well, because it would be distracting for other children as well, because it's something they've been used to in the past, few months. Children that had no phones before will they have phones now. So how do you handle that? Please, educators too should be aware. And another final thing, please, for children, they would be learning so many other things. They've had access to the internet, the social media. They know a lot of things. Your children will be coming home with so many information. If you're not making that conversation, they will be digesting it. So you want to start, let them know even before they go to school. Your friends would be telling you this. They would be giving you some gist, what they've learned, using the internet. Please come home and tell me about it, so that you can nip anything that is not in their favor in the bud as quickly as possible. So I hope I have been able to.
Thank you. That was an excellent answer. And I think the key learning or the key takeaway from that is, again, keeping those communications lines open with our children and ensuring that our children know that they can talk to us about anything, being probing, asking them questions, and letting them know that we are open to whatever answers they're giving us. Tolu, there's a question for you. Somebody says, thank you so much, Mr. Tolu, for your contribution. Can you share some insight on pickup protocols? So I guess at the end of the day, when it's time to pick the children up, what protocols do you have in place for that?
Okay, thanks. Pickup protocols, like I said earlier, because we have staggered closing times. The children in each class at the time when they are leaving school will go to a specific exit point, where the parents will be able to collect them. And they would leave not in their usual bunch-up manner. So exit will be a relatively slower process to make sure each child is living with decent space and the parents can comfortably collect them and take them off. That's how it's going to work at a very high level. The overall objective, again, is to make sure that, look, to the extent possible, you create that space and distancing and comfort, which is why we introduced the staggered closing time. So, you have no business being at school if your child hasn't finished and for the day and you don't come into school to collect. They go to the exit point in turn, and the parents collect them from there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tolu. So I have just two more questions. One question is for you, Faye. I think Green Springs has a boarding. Do you have a boarding school? Someone is asking how this system is going to work in the boarding school.
Okay. Again, we're starting with phased reopening, as has been advised, and of course, that is the only thing that is manageable. So even for boarding, we're going to have our exit class students come in first, year 11s, and immediately they come in. One of the things we're saying to parents is they cannot go home, because usually, before we went on vacation, we used to have what we call exit weekends, and some people were weekly boarders, but all of that is not going to happen now. So if you come in as a boarder, you check in, of course, all the regular checks will have been done so that we're sure you can be in the hostel. So we sort of maintain that bubble. So parents cannot visit, so there's nothing like visiting day, you can't go home. And if for any reason, because sometimes we have parents who are saying, we have embassy appointment, we have a dental appointment or whatever. If you have to pick up that child from the hostel, unfortunately, the child cannot return, because it's our responsibility as much as we can to keep that bubble intact. And just like we're going to do for the day students, the schedules we're putting in place, the hand washing, the temperature checks, we're going to be doing the same, with the boarders and the rest of that, so that we're sure that something is not being transferred into the hostel, so to say. So that is how we want to approach boarding. And also, before now, we used to have people come in to sort out the borders, cut their hair and the rest of that. We're not going to do that. So we're even looking at our policy around hair, just to be sure that we're limiting and minimizing to the PRS minimum any risk posed to the children.
Thank you so much, Faye. This is going to be my last question to the panel. It looks like Abiola has had to drop off. So we'll have to find a way to everyone who's had questions for her. We'll have to find another session to bring her back so she can answer your questions. Dr. Oge, this question is for you, and we will take it in 30 seconds and then wrap up after that. Somebody wants to know how safe is prolonged mask wearing for children if they're wearing the mask for long periods of time during the day. And also, can children wear, if they combine the face mask and the face shield, again, for long periods, is it safe?
All right, thank you very much for that question.
Seconds, please.
Yeah, interestingly, I was looking at a document that's just been released on the 14th of this month by combined UNICEF and WHO guidelines on return to school. I'll actually send you that document, Kemi, later, which you can share.
Thank you.
And there was a section on face mask wearing. Obviously, concerns are about the the prolonged time. However, what they are suggesting is that the younger children shouldn't actually need to wear masks. So children in nursery school, reception, the social distancing, the washing of hands, sanitizing is possibly enough. And then the older children, and I heard one of the teachers, educators mention having a mask-free interval for the children during the school hours as well. So a combination of that, in addition to making sure that the children are also using appropriate masks. From my experience and the experience of other people, we've seen that there are masks and there are masks. Some of them are not good quality masks. You don't have appropriate breathing filters in. Then you have a lot of the cloth masks as well. So there has to be some mindfulness, a degree of mindfulness in choosing the masks for the children as well. With that, the children should be fine. So I don't think there's going to be a question of a prolonged, because if some people actually tell you in their facilities, they are using masks for prolonged period and it's been fine, and it will be the same for the children, but it's important that the right quality of mask is being used, the social distancing is still being maintained, and the children tend to get a bit of mask-free periods for them to breathe a bit, especially when they're in a well-aerated, ventilated space like outside as well. So I think there shouldn't be too much concerns if these measures are met.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Oge. On that note, we are going to round out what was a very, very robust and insightful conversation. My thanks again to everybody on the panel, Tolu, Faye, Tami, Dr. Oge, and Eniola for giving us that fantastic keynote speech, and to Abiola, who's has had to run off. Thank you very much for being here, for staying with us for this long. We've gone a little bit over the time that we had allotted for this, but it's because the conversation, I think, was so germane, and we have a lot of questions. We'll find a way to compile those questions and answer the questions. To our audience, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for engaging. As we had said earlier, when Rosemary was speaking, she spoke about some of the products that Union Bank has in place to support educators, to support teachers, and to support parents in our united quest to give our children the very best education. If you have any questions about any of those products, there's some contact information on the screen right now. Please take down those details. You can reach us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter as well. Our website is on there, the Edu360 website. And there's an email address for Tolu Amoshu, who's on our education desk. You can send an email and you'll get a response. There's a phone number there as well. As I mentioned at the start of this webinar, this session is a part of our Edu360 webinar series. Follow us on social media for more information about upcoming engagements that we'll be having in the Edu360, on the Edu360 platform. And you can also visit our website, which is on the screen, for more information about our initiatives. Finally, I want to say once again, a big, big, big thank you to all our speakers and panelists for being here today, for taking time out of your precious Saturday morning to spend with us. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the deep insights that you've shared as well. Thank you again. Thank you to all our audience for being here, and have a fantastic weekend to everyone. We'll see you again soon.